Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another meeting for our Boston.NET Architecture Group. And wanted to say a special thank you to Jeff Fritz, who is joining us tonight. We were just talking last week. I was looking for some speakers for the next couple months or so, and just trying to figure out scheduling and had an opportunity to reach out to Jeff and very appreciative that he was willing to sort of jump in and speak to us. But the topic that he's come up with, I think, is fantastic. As an architecture group, we have been around since 2004. Started then as what we call it was called the Boston Code Brew. It was based on an idea in Portland. That location was Portland Code Brew, and we decided to create something like that. Basically, a bunch of us getting together and talking about code, and most of us developers and architects. A little bit later, it changed to the Boston.NET Architecture Group, and it's been that ever since. About 5+ years ago, we finally moved over to Meetup, and we've been here ever since. And since 2020, early 2020, we've been meeting virtually and having opportunity with speakers from places that are not just around the Boston area or New England to come and speak to us. And so again, really appreciate you, Jeff, for joining us, and really look forward to this talk. And like I said, especially because we love the architecture and challenging, how do we do this? We always learn a lot from those kinds of talks. And so really appreciate it. So thank you again, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. My goodness. It's always great to talk to a bunch of folks, and this is a discussion. And those of you that are out there watching the recording, sorry you missed the discussion, but hopefully some of your questions are going to be asked and answered as part of this. Please, those of you that are watching live, feel free to drop those questions in chat like we talked about. We'll bring some of you on audio and video here if there's some good topics that we want to dig into. I've got about 40 slides here that I want to go through, and I want to talk about building a startup live on Twitch. That's a little bit weird. That's a little bit of a mashup of things that I want to make sure we kind of cover, we kind of understand what's going on here before I dig into building a startup. What's that like? So my name is Jeff Fritz. I've been working with Microsoft as a community manager now for 8 years, 9 years, something like that. I don't know. I work remotely from here in my home, and I present, I teach a lot, I help write content for a lot of the .NET training, help provide Visual Studio education for folks, build modules for Learn, and I also plan and organize large events. So coming up, I've got .NET Conf that we've been planning and getting ready. That happens in November. You'll find us November 8, 9, and 10 coming up this year with the launch of .NET 7. That's what I've been doing during the day the past few months, getting ready for that. But I like to stream on Twitch, and when I do stream on Twitch, I do something called live coding. Now, live coding is kind of like what we're doing here. We have a host, we have somebody who's speaking, typically on camera, writing software, interacting with viewers, answering chat. Think of it as HGTV, but for geeks. We're writing code, we're talking about what we're writing, we're interested in seeing how things evolve, and we're able to chime in and suggest and hopefully guide the project, that whatever is being worked on, into a direction that's going to hopefully yield some value and be cool, be something that we kind of have a vested interest in. And I started doing this back in November 2017. So I'm finishing up my 5th year now doing this. I can't believe 5 years. I was made an affiliate on Twitch very quickly in January 2018. I was named a Twitch partner. There's of the 10 million folks that stream on Twitch, there's about 40,000 partners. I was named one of those in February 2019. We see about about 20,000 followers. That was in April 2022. We're just over 20,000 right now here in October 2022. And we see about 110 concurrent viewers. So I'm all in on the Twitch platform, teaching, broadcasting live, sharing, talking to folks, and really being vulnerable on camera, talking and showing my programming style, warts and all. Like, I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to make a lot of mistakes, but I'm also going to fix them, and we're going to evolve, and hopefully something cool happens. And for a lot of the time when I was building software on Twitch, I would build something open source. You're already seeing the source code. Wouldn't it be great if you could just go out to GitHub, download it, and contribute, send a pull request or something? And that's really cool. Totally awesome. What's interesting is folks will also go out there and they'll be like, well, I'm thinking 2 or 3 steps ahead of Fritz here. I'm going to write the next conclusion thing and write a pull request that rewrites the entire thing and does something totally amazing that we hadn't even thought of yet. And it kind of ruins the show when something like that happens. You know what I'm saying? So I wanted to go in a different direction. I wanted to do something that could be open source, but was different. I wasn't writing a library. I wanted to build a website. I wanted to build a website that showed off and promoted what I enjoyed, the Twitch video streaming platform. Yeah, a lot of folks play games out there, but I'm teaching about software. I've got friends that are doing all kinds of artistic work out there, folks that are making handbags, folks that are painting, folks that are making ceramic mugs and things. Crumbs, there was even somebody that was making jewelry, making chainmail jewelry live on Twitch. Totally cool, but how do you find these people? And that's when the idea started to grow, started to happen here about, let's build an application. I want a long-running development project that I can do on my stream, that I can share and produce live, that's going to generate a real website to help connect folks with my stream and hopefully with others. And I was hearing, as I was developing and building with Blazor at the time, I was hearing comments like, well, Blazor isn't really supported by Microsoft because no one has a cool website that uses it. Who really does Blazor? This is just a toy. Nobody's actually going to use this thing. And folks were also saying, I want to be able to discover Twitch clips in the same way that I browse TikTok. I want to be able to search around and scroll, and there's new clips, new video, new channels being presented to me. And I'm not really searching for them. They're just being suggested to me. Okay. And you know what? I don't know anyone who uses Azure to build anything cool on the web. You hear that quote sometimes too. So I had these 4 different things that were going on. I had something I wanted to program. I had how much I enjoyed Twitch. I wanted to do something with Blazor. I wanted to do something with Azure. And I pulled those ideas together and I came up with this idea for what I call Clip Talk. The idea, the name is that mashup of clips and that TikTok-like interface. So we have Clip Talk, social fun with videos. So I started with a 12-hour stream. In fact, you can see a timer here above my head there in the video clip that I'm about to play. This was a 12-hour stream that I ran where I said, I have this idea and I'm just going to run with it. How far can we get building this thing? And this was what, November? It was somewhat mid-November 2020 was my 3-year stream anniversary. And I wanted to get just that initial application working with users being able to log in with their Twitch ID and be able to click a like button to like a clip. So this is what we got. I've just announced this morning called Clip Talk that is going to make Twitch clips available in a TikTok-like interaction. And we're using Blazor to allow you to do that interaction and have a very rich experience there. I just did a reload and it found that. Okay. So very, very basic, just getting a clip, a video to present on screen with Blazor. Looking back now, almost 2 years since I did this first little bit of code, that's nothing. It's nothing for me to do. But thinking about getting video to play with Blazor, a web user interface framework that really wasn't designed to play video. It was designed to do a whole bunch of other things with C# live in the browser using WebAssembly, and we got it working. We got a couple other things working that first day, and it was a big step. Yes, I already played that. So what did we say Clip Talk was going to be that first day? Well, we wanted to build it on Azure. It was going to be Azure through and through, not going to host and do any gimmicks somewhere else, but we wanted to show that we were using Azure tools, Azure facilities, and it was going to be cool. We wanted to host with Blazor and Azure Static Websites. So Azure Static Websites is a way for us to host static Blazor WebAssembly applications. So there's no server-side bits that are rendering HTML and sending it to the browser. It's all C# code that's being sent to you and running in your browser on your machine. There's Azure functions on the backside that are interacting with data stores to retrieve data and make it available for your Blazor application to show in your browser. I also wanted to make sure that it was developed on stream by a streamer for streamers. This was important to continue that feel of community, not just, hey, I'm some guy from Microsoft coming in that's going to write some software and have it be valuable and everybody wants to use it. No, I'm part of the community. I'm one of you building a tool for you that's going to make your experience better. Very, very cool. And finally, of course, the actual features that I wanted it to drive. Well, I wanted to make clips, those 1-minute segments of a video. I wanted to make them easy for folks to discover, because if folks find those 1-minute highlights that are created on Twitch, then we can go viral. Then we can share those more easily. And the way that Twitch does it, it's hidden. It's behind some other user interface choices, and it's kind of clumsy. So we can do this better, more graphical, and have it feel and look and deliver value that everybody's going to enjoy. So I made some initial tech choices, right? Let's get to the architecture of this thing. What did you actually do here? So I mentioned up front, Azure Static Websites. At the time that we chose it in November 2020, it was just a preview. It wasn't even the full version of it yet. But we used Blazor WebAssembly. We were on .NET 5. So that felt really good. We had some Azure functions sitting in another application that would synchronize data back and forth with Twitch. Okay, so we've got an initial bit there. And in November 2020, I had 5 clips that I started with at that time. I literally wrote a JSON file to disk that said, here's the data about these 5 clips. I didn't even bring in a database or anything at that point. No data storage. Just let's see if we can put these 5 videos on screen. What does it look like? Tinker with the feel and get to architecting for interacting with the database later, because that introduces a whole bunch of complexity. The first important thing is get video on screen, have it hosted somewhere, and then we can start wiring up to a database and interacting with the other services that are going to come into play very soon after. So I wanted to make it simple, so I just use Azure Table Storage, queues, blobs. I figured I could render JSON of, here's the list of clips into, I put them into a table to start after I got them out of my little JSON file, but I'll put my clip records into a Azure table. I can have some queues to separate and add a little bit of disconnected data processing to guarantee the delivery of messages, make sure that all of my save interactions, all of my data interactions happen cleanly. And I could write some blobs out there with some JSON files that included things like, well, who do you follow on Twitch? What are the accounts that you're interested in, the channels that you like to watch? So I know which ones to load up to present to you. I can get them from Twitch, save them to disk. And when it comes time to load up those, we'll just read the file from disk and parse and show those channels. Very simple. We didn't have to think too much about it. But I did have a gap that I needed to address, and that was SEO. Google Bing, DuckDuckGo, Ask Jeeves. Is Ask Jeeves still around? Lycos? I don't know. I don't know other search engines. Bing, Google, DuckDuckGo. Those are the big three that I primarily worry about. They don't parse WebAssembly. So how do we do search engine optimization? How do we get those search engines to find us? So I decided to stand up an SEO friendly version of the website, just a little ASP.NET Core website that would render the same URLs, but would be sitting off to the side next to the Blazor website, run with a minimal install, because I'm going to cache the stuff on it aggressively, output cache it to the nines, because none of the files are going to change. And I'll stand up Azure Front Door in front of that. So when I see a bot make a request, instead of it going to go get the Blazor WebAssembly stuff and run WebAssembly and do all the bells and whistles in the browser, for the Google bot or the Facebook bot or the Twitter bot or Bing bot or whoever, DuckBot, DuckDuckBot, I don't know. I'll send it over to this little ASP.NET Core website that's got all the output caching turned on, runs really fast, because the only things hitting it are the bots. Easy rules to set up, put it over there, and I can hide it from Google and Bing and DuckDuckGo, so they don't come through and reject indexing anything on my website because they don't know what to do with WebAssembly. Cool. That works out nicely. And the last thing that I reached a little bit for this, could we do this for folks that are on mobile devices? Let's give them a PWA experience, a progressive web app experience. Cache all that stuff on the phone, all of the Blazor stuff. You don't need to download it again, and just download the content about the clips and the videos and the images, the thumbnails. Just have those be the only things downloaded. All the code to run the website, cache running as a PWA on the device. Sure, easy to do. We've got a nice template to do that, so why not? And it worked pretty well. Didn't have to think too much about that for a long time. So once I knew how I wanted to approach this, now how do I start to integrate? How do I integrate with Twitch? I copied the data by hand for these first 5 clips that you see down there in the timestamp, November 2020. Those first 5 clips, I just copied. I wrote them into a table. I had them in a JSON file for a while when I was testing. I need to actually get data from Twitch, and I need to get data regularly because, well, just like Twitter or Facebook, it's a live system and we need to present data as it happens. So I started thinking about syncing data from Twitch. Well, I don't want to actually download the video from Twitch because that's a recipe for storing a ton of data. So I don't want to do that. Let's keep the clip video over on Twitch and just download the metadata about it. By doing this, it forces the video views back to Twitch. It doesn't necessarily count them on my system, but it continues to count them where it matters on Twitch. That's a good thing. It also means that if for some reason, for DMCA reasons, for copyright reasons, whatever it might be, if a clip is withdrawn from Twitch, then I don't need to go and search my system to go withdraw it either. If the video is gone from Twitch, it's gone from my system too. I just need to make sure that I sync every now and again to make sure, hey, does that clip still exist? And if it doesn't, delete the record from my database. So I've got 3 steps basically. Check Twitch and detect if there's new clips, add them to my clips table, and then publish notifications so that folks see, hey, there's clips out there we need to serve, we need to present. So when we're syncing data from Twitch, there's a couple issues with how we do that. Twitch's API isn't exactly friendly with respect to this. There is no webhook or notification when clips are created. So that's going to put us into some sort of polling mechanism. So let's search Twitch for new clips in the channels we know. We'll index only a few channels, and for those channels that we recognize, go get that data and we'll put them in the database and we'll mark, here's the time that we got the last clip. Let me know if this sounds familiar, friends. Then I can just come back and next time I search for clips on that channel, on the C# Fritz channel, my channel, will only search for clips since the last clip that we fetched. We do have a little bit of a rate limit though. We can search only one channel at a time, but we can execute 80,000 queries a minute. And this is what our HTTP API looks like. We're going to do an HTTP GET against an API Twitch TV endpoint, searching for clips and the broadcaster ID we pass in. So it's C# Fritz in this case. It could be Ninja. It could be Dr. Lupo or Tim the Tatman or Disguised Toasts. Any one of these folks that I'm, if you don't know, your kids know, and they're either out there on Twitch or they were out there on Twitch. I'm mentioning some folks that have migrated off since. Okay, so we've got a way to get data. But what about the volume of channels that are out there? We know that most clips are created while streams are live. There's clips that are created while streams are not live. But if we know we can also search Twitch for which streams are live, and we could search for 100 at a time, instead of searching across all those channels one at a time to say, hey, are there new clips? I could do a search and say, well, which of the channels I know are live? And then only query those channels for new clips and occasionally come back and do a cleanup and say, well, were there any new clips created on the other channels as well? So for the first 100 channels on the site, using this approach, my first query is, well, how many channels are live? And let's say I got an answer back from Twitch. These 20 channels are live. Great. Then queries 2 through 21, show me the clips that are available on that channel. So instead of searching all 100 channels one at a time and burning 100 queries from my rate limited API access, I've only searched 21 times. I've reduced significantly the amount of interaction I have with the API. Also means that I'm going to reduce the amount of interactions I have with the database to potentially save new clips. Okay, that's a big thing. I also want to make sure that I don't interact and save data as I'm syncing. That thread that's fetching and interacting and pulling data back, don't save clips during that. It started slowing down the process. I was inserting those into my Azure Table Storage, and Azure Table Storage is slow, even running asynchronously, saying run that and let the task run, and when it's done, let me know and move on to the next task. It was still slow. So I started publishing data to a queue. I used Azure Queues. There's a new clip that's arrived, publish it to the queue, and another thread somewhere else. I set up another function with a queue trigger. When new clips were added into that queue trigger kicked off, the function would identify, here's the new clip data that was stored in the queue, go write that to the database. So I end up with much more durable interaction to read and save data with my database. This is a typical thing that feels good, but it's also very simple because I'm using just standard Azure queues, right? First in, first out approach. There's more we can do with that as this evolves. We're still in November. We're still only looking at those first 5 clips. And then I needed to make this decision. If we're going to be doing this live on stream, should this be open source or shouldn't it? I really want it to be open source, but there's another of other folks out there building Twitch clip websites, tools and things that are interacting. And if this is successful, I don't want to actually give them my source code and make them better. That doesn't make sense. So the way ClipTalk syncs, this could also be used to knock over Twitch. The way that I'm syncing and running those queries, nothing says that I couldn't turn that up and let the number of queries just run. Go ahead and hit it with 100,000 queries for all the channels every minute. Oof. So in an effort to be a little bit more of a better internet citizen, shouldn't do that. Shouldn't make tools available that folks can use to knock over websites. I also from the get-go wanted to do a little bit of self-preservation. Let's give this the tools and things we need to protect our IP. People can see our source code as we're writing it live on Twitch, but I'm not going to hand it to them. I'm okay with them learning things and documenting and sharing bits and pieces of the code, but I'm not going to give you the entire source code base. That's a little, while it would be nice for educational purposes, I can publish sections of the source code and simplify it to teach segments, publish that on my blog or DevTO or someplace else without actually giving away the entire source code. So I'm okay with that. This solves a couple goals for me. It gives me a vehicle to explore and show off new Azure features. I'm going to talk about a couple of those features that I explored in a minute. It also means that I can provide feedback to Azure teams and .NET teams about their services and tools. Cool. All right. I'm building something that's a live website that folks can explore, touch, and give me feedback on. That's a pretty cool thing. It also means I get to promote Blazor WebAssembly features that use a very large data set, and it's gonna get bigger. So things that we stumbled on, there's a component inside Blazor WebAssembly called Virtualize that lets you create one of those virtual, never-ending scrollable lists. Well, when you have a large data set and you have large objects, if I want to do this with videos so that you're scrolling and a video pops up and it takes up 70 to 80% of the screen, it doesn't work the same way as you when you have a grid with 1 million records in it that you're scrolling through and 15 records appear on the screen at the same time, and each element in that grid is 1.2 em tall, right? It's a little bit different. So it doesn't quite behave the same, and it exposed and showed the Blazor team some more stressed, interesting ways that their product was being used. So at this point, I was in January 2021. I had a couple folks say, sure, why don't you go ahead and load clips from my channel too? I had about 10, 20 channels at this point that I was looking at and bringing in. And I had about 20,000 clips at that point loaded and folks interacting with and live out there for people to click into. And you can go to the website now. It's cliptalk.com. I'll even pop that into chat right there. KLIPTOK.com. And you'll see this website's grown a lot further from when that first screenshot video was. The first feature that I wanted to add was, well, search. If I wanted folks to be able to discover clips and find them and interact with them better, well, let's try Azure Search. That's a thing. We can load data into that and wire up a search engine to a search box at the top of the screen. A lot of websites have that. I can do that too. So let's use Azure Search. It'll create an index that can be queried as a RESTful endpoint. That's great. Blazor WebAssembly knows how to reach out and interact with REST services. So let's do that. And I already have my data stored in Azure Table Storage. I could also store it in Cosmos DB or SQL Server and it'll index it for me. So it's already in table storage. Just point search at that, reuse my table storage, and I can load up. Here's the list of channels that I have, and here's the list of clips that I have, and away I go. It won't cost me a thing because the first 50 meg of Azure Search is free. 50 meg. I'm going to be good for a while on this, right? And I ended up with a nice little feature here where I've got the ability to do type ahead search. You see there on the image on the left. And I could do search and return a list of here's the clips that have that term, and you see that in the screenshot there on the right, and it felt good. It was simple. It searched another service, brought back. I had 500,000 clips at this point. That's a lot of clips. 500,000 clips, a lot of video that I'm serving and letting people search through, and this service is starting to grow. I like it. Right? I'm 500,000 clips. That's a couple hundred meg. Okay, we're doing all right here. I wanted to start getting feedback at this point. Where do I go next? What are the next features that I'm working with? And I wanted to let people file bugs. So I can't recommend this one enough. I went and grabbed a Docker container called Fider, Fider. There's a website, getfider.com. This lets you stand up your own user voice website. So it connects to a Postgres database. So I just grabbed one of these, threw it onto Azure App Service, pointed at a Postgres database, and I was golden. It was off and running, and I had my own user voice without having to pay for user voice. I could do whatever I want with it. It was built and managed by somebody else. It's written in Go. It has a slow development cycle, so I didn't have to chase update versions of this coming. I could skin it the way I wanted to with a little bit of CSS, a logo. I set up the logins with OAuth, so you could log in with GitHub or Twitch or a handful of other user accounts, and pass that along, put a link on the website, and folks could start sending feedback in. Fantastic little container and service that you can grab and use inside your internal company websites, publish it out to the web. It's a fantastic little application. I can't recommend it enough. It's been just tremendous for me for, gosh, the past year now, year and a half almost, more than something like that. It's been a while. So I started seeing, we hit our first 1 million clips here in March. Folks are using this site that are outside the States, outside of English speaking countries. We should handle those folks in international capabilities. And this was a feature I hadn't really explored with Blazor. So here's another place where I can test and explore and learn how to use a new feature. So I spent some time figuring out, how do we want to do culture? How do we do a culture selector in there? So I wrote a little bit of JavaScript and some Blazor that gives me a little chooser there, a drop-down box that folks could choose, and will set the culture for the .NET thread, for the C# thread that's running inside Blazor in the browser. So you could choose English with a US region. You could choose Danish, German, so on and so forth. And I could then roll that out and put appropriate text, swap that in wherever I had labels throughout the website. And I even open sourced, you see, I open sourced the repository for that. So folks from other cultures, other countries could submit translations for the website for their language. Really cool. I've been absolutely amazed and blessed to have folks contribute their time and send over some translations in their language. And it's really evolved. And I think there's 26 languages now that we support, not all to the same level and quality. Some folks have kept up, some folks haven't, but it's a pretty good selection of languages that for some of these folks gets you in and gets you started with the website. But you'll also see there, I have a little bit of Arabic. And Arabic's a little bit trickier because we need right to left support. So here's what I did. I wrote a little snippet here right at the top of the website. Inside my HTML, I added the dir attribute. And if a little bit of C# there, if the current culture's text information says that we read right to left, output the RTL attribute. If not, set it to auto. Done. This got most of my right to left concerns in the browser solved. There were a couple other places where I needed to write some CSS rules to align things instead of on the left, align them on the right. No big deal. It looks good and feels right for those folks who read right to left languages. And I feel pretty good about how that makes the website feel more inclusive. Folks get it looking and feeling like it belongs in their culture by default. I like that. So I hit my first tech challenge in April. I was outgrowing Azure storage. The latency in table storage is just too high. It takes too long. Data takes way too long to load when you start getting a little bit more data in there. That said, I was at 1 million in March 2021, and that says 500,000. No, that should be 1 million over here. I didn't copy the number right. The transaction cost was just too high at this point as well. I was doing so much reading and writing of those files that my Azure table storage transaction cost was astronomical for a little website that had very little data at this point. I can't keep doing that. So I took a look at the next recommended storage, Cosmos DB. It wasn't structured like the way I think of my data right now, and I'm not replicating geographically, so don't do that. That doesn't make sense. So I introduced some repository patterns and interfaces around how I was interacting with Azure Table Storage and Blob Storage at the time. It felt good because all of my Azure functions interacted through a repository at that point, and it was still touching Azure Table Storage, but I could then re-implement the repositories with MySQL and do a little dependency injection swap when I was ready to say, okay, instead of pointing to Azure Table Storage, now you're going to use these repositories that know how to interact with MySQL. And I'm familiar with MySQL. It's relational database. Relational database is good. We can use that. And I felt good about that. I would use a little bit of entity framework to reach out and interact with MySQL. There were several drivers available, and none of them were very reliable at the time, but I found one that worked for me. And then I ran into this problem. Azure functions, they scale horizontally as needed. So if they're scaling horizontally and we need to do a lot of work, you could end up DDoSing your own database because you're only limited. You've only got a limit of 100 connections to that MySQL database. You can expand and set that number up and down, but it doesn't matter. If you set it up or down, you're going to end up DDoSing your own database. There was no backup nodes to that MySQL database anyway. That's going to be a problem. If something happens and it gets knocked over because these Azure functions scale horizontally, suddenly nobody can get to the database. Suddenly nobody can read data. That's a problem. Also, Azure Search doesn't run off of MySQL. So I still needed Azure Storage to load the search index. At this point, I introduced Service Bus because I needed to write data to 2 locations. So when I got a new clip, instead of putting it in a queue, put it into a Service Bus, and it would write to both locations at the same time. I had one topic, new clips, and I had a Save Clip subscription hanging off of it, and I had a Search Clips subscription hanging off of it. Done. This one wrote to MySQL. This one wrote into Azure Table Storage. We were good. Okay. I feel good about that. But we still had some other challenges. Costs started going up. And as a startup, as just me, just a guy writing code live on stream, costs went from $0 for all those free services to about $200 a month. At one point, I had a misconfiguration of app services and I got a bill for $4,000. We didn't have a good conversation with Mrs. Fritz that evening. I was able to get a refund. Going forward, though, I talked to my friends at Progress Software. They saw what I was doing and they wanted to help give me some components, and they gave me a sponsorship to help cover some of those costs. Amazing, really helpful. So I would be demoing Blazor components live on stream, and I'd provide links and information back to their components, to their product on the about page of the website, so that they were getting a little bit of promotion. Fantastic. Everybody's happy about that. They get their information. Get Fighters going to Fighter.io. Thank you. I didn't know it changed the website. Much appreciated. So that ended up being a bit of a help from them. I also formed an LLC to manage costs and risk. If something happened, somebody came down with a privacy concern, somebody came through with an issue on the website, it's on the LLC. It's not on me. Protect my interests. It's on the business. If the business goes away, the website goes away, that's fine. It doesn't affect me personally. That's just good protection when you're building websites, building applications that are going out there in the real world as it is. I then started taking some steps to add some interesting features that were unique and Twitch hadn't thought of. like artificial intelligence. You can search for clips by titles. You can do this on Twitch. But what about the actual content of the clip? So let's add some transcription capabilities. I talked to some folks at a company called Assembly AI. They do transcriptions from audio. So as clips arrive, I would store the results of the transcription next to the clip in the search index. So now when you do a search, not only do you search for the title, but you can search for everywhere that I use the word blazer on a clip and find it. It might not be in the title of the clip, but you can find it because I said blazer in the clip. Now that's interesting. Nobody does that. Let's dig into that a little bit more. It changes the way now that we're doing our sync from Twitch. We are putting that data on a service bus topic called new clips. We're going to receive that data, insert it into our MySQL database. We're going to generate a transcription while it's adding it to the clips table. So the clip is already on the table. We're waiting for the transcription to come back. We also have it going into the search index. When the transcription finishes coming back, we write that into the clip table and also into search storage, and we publish notifications to various locations that, hey, new clips have arrived. Cool. It's June 2021 and we're at 3 million clips. We've tripled in size in 2 months. Uh-oh. Database is big, 3 million clips. Database is now 5 gigabytes in size. 5 gigabytes, that's a big database. Azure Search is approaching 2 gigabytes in size. That's a big problem because there's a price cliff that happens at 2 gigabytes. There's a search, there's a cliff that happens there where your price goes from $70 a month to $300 a month. That's a problem. I'm not paying $300 a month for that next clip after 2 gigabytes. I can't swing that. That's way too much. And I still have to maintain that Azure storage code. So can I consolidate my data storage so that I don't have MySQL, Azure Storage, and Azure Search and save money? So I chose RavenDB as my new database provider. And this is a question I get a lot. Why RavenDB? What's RavenDB? It's a NoSQL database built on .NET, runs all on cloud providers. So it introduces the same Lucene indexing that's available in Azure Search, but it's sitting there right on top of my database. I get a cluster of 3 RavenDB nodes for the same price as what I was going to be paying for search, storage, and MySQL, what I was paying at the time. And I get automatic backups. Good. That's what I need. And we're now at 4 million clips in July. All right. What do we need to do? Well, RavenDB builds and manages indexes differently than we think of relational data. So I've got to re-architect and rethink of how I work with my data. Otherwise, it's going to, if I use relational concepts, it's going to just demolish the performance. And RavenDB doesn't use entity framework like I was using with MySQL. So I need to rewrite that repository code. And it took a few months to do this. I'm not going to lie, just me. It took about 2 months to do this. It was October. We got up and running and I felt good about it. It was running faster, better search. We can move on to other features. So I started rolling out features on top of that RavenDB database. I added a system status dashboard so that I could show you, here's the number of clips transcribed each day. I upgraded Blazor to .NET 6 because newer, faster, more performant. Use it. Absolutely. Smaller footprint. We like that. I also added the IAB category. That's the International Advertiser Board. So Assembly AI was detecting what categories clips were in and was also giving me warning tags, safety tags, things that say, well, there's profanity in this clip. There's NSFW, not safe for work language in this clip. And it might be good to share some of that information. So here, this clip called Back from Vacation from our friend Fierce Kittens on Twitch has the tags vacation properties. she's talking about vacation, so that makes sense. Family travel. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. She's probably talking about that in the clip. However, sounds like she was swearing because I've got a warning tag of profanity and NSFW, and that's okay. She might be saying, "Oh, it was such an effing bad time because of filth and foul and whatever." Sure, that's fine, but I'm now warned. I know that that's coming in the clip, and I can store those as tags on a record in a collection in RavenDB, because RavenDB records aren't single records. They aren't one-dimensional like a tuple that you would find in a typical relational database. No, that record can have arrays of data on it. I can have other structures of data hanging on it. So I have an array of category data sitting next to it, and I could take those transcripts, and instead of having them in a search repository off indexed by Azure Search, I can put them inside the clip itself. And I can have my transcript sitting right next to the clip data. Great stuff. And at this time, I'm up to 7 million clips. 7 million clips. Whew. January comes around, rolled out a couple more changes. Because I can search the database and do some other interesting things, I added date and category filters to Discovery. So I'm adding more search and query capabilities, not really changing the way that we store data at this point, but changing the way we query and read data. I received some feedback from users who wanted more query capabilities and filtering, and I wasn't ready to push my database just yet. I added a streamer dashboard with a heat map and a radar chart there you see on the bottom to show clips, which day of the week clips are being created, who the most viewed folks are that are creating clips, and where folks are interested in watching my clips. What are the most viewed categories? And I updated my search page at that point. Time went on, and we got into April, and I had 10 million clips. April 2022, just a few months ago. And I added the ability to create playlists. I saw playlists on YouTube. I thought, that's a pretty cool idea. It'd be great if I could put clips together so you can play them back to back to back, just like I do the YouTube videos that I'm interested in. I clicked that save for later. So I introduced playlists so I could create a group of clips that I want to watch back to back to back, and I can store them in the database. You can see there's my data storage next to it. It's an array. It's an array of IDs for those clips under a record, a single record for this playlist. I'm not storing all the video and content for this. Here's the pointer to what the clips are. And for the 8 clips on this playlist, it's what? 10K? Not even a K? Like, it's nothing. That's fine. That's great. Gets compressed up real small, and I can serve that like it's nothing and have all the load operation taking place over in the browser. Fantastic. Nothing to worry about there. The next month, May, we're at 11 million clips, and I wanted to get a little bit smarter about things. We introduced artificial intelligence almost a year prior. Let's do it again. Let's introduce, wait a sec. Skip forward a slide. I'm reading my preview slide. I introduced live channel reporting. We already knew from that search optimization, that sync optimization that I did up front, we already knew what channels were live. So let's actually show them. Let's put them on the sidebar and tell you, hey, these channels are live. You may want to check these out. So I did that. And I also added a context menu as well. So I'm reusing data I was already collecting in new ways. And that kind of feeds into, there's the slide I was thinking about. We did artificial intelligence with getting speech to text for the transcripts. Let's do it with some channel suggestions. Here's the first bit of discovery that I wrote. So I know what channels you follow, because when you log into ClipTalk, I go grab a list of channels you follow, put them in the index so I can show you for the channels that you follow, the channels you like. Here's the clips that are available, new clips that you might not have seen yet. So let's take that list of follows, the list that other folks follow, compare them, and use that same movie recommendation algorithm that folks at Netflix use. Not quite the same, but close enough, and it's built on ML.NET. I actually followed the tutorial line for line from the Microsoft Docs, and give that same, well, if other folks follow these channels that you follow, and they like these other channels that you don't, maybe you'd like them as well, right? It's the "Would you like fries with that?" algorithm. I don't know the exact name for it, but that's basically what it's doing. And that's all that I need to know. So I generate a model every 6 hours based on the activity on the website, save it into Azure Blob Storage, and I cache that model in my API functions memory, and I'm able to do a quick check. Well, here's the list of folks you follow. Who do you recommend I check out as well? And I can paint that list of channels on the screen. So here, Snick Live, Wasted Space, Northern Lion, Sweet Anita. Sure. I don't know who they are, but I'll check them out. I'll click in and see what's new on those channels. Maybe there is something that I'd like. Now, I moved to Service Bus, and I was doing some servicing and keeping things up to date here, but I missed out on some things. And I needed to get back and do some dead letter queue reprocessing. This was such a mistake that I wasn't doing this earlier in the game. But there were several thousand letters sitting in my dead letter queue in August that were clips that had never been downloaded. I already had a command line tool that I had written to go and reprocess these records, but it would only run whenever I would start up and run that tool and would remember to do it. So that's nice. Let's attach it to a timer trigger, schedule it, and get it out there and have it rerun. Now I have it run once an hour to reprocess any clips, reprocess any clips that haven't been touched. We can also do a little bit of extra error handling in there just to make sure that they get through and get saved to the database properly. And at this point, we've got 16 million clips. This was August, 2 months ago. And I feel good about that. 16 million clips, website's going great. Well, let's add some other features based on some other data that we already know. Like what's trending? What are folks actually doing on the website? We know it's live on Twitch, but what are folks actually watching? So I built this user interface. Now, there's a lot going on here. Let me take you on a quick tour. Top left, I have a bar graph that shows here's the popular categories, right? The different genres, things that folks are doing on Twitch that have these number of viewers that you might be interested in. There's 143,000 people hosting talk shows, 72,000 people playing Overwatch 2. I took this screenshot about 2 hours ago to make sure it was good and current. Lots of folks playing Pokemon. Valorant has 55,000 people watching, according to ClipTalk, based on the channels that we watch, which are a small sampling of the website. And when you choose one of those bars, when you click on it, I'm going to show you here's the active channels that are currently going on. Now, that special event says 51,000. I click that, and it looks like there's a Silent Hill event going on. We see a bunch of folks that are showing very similar screenshots in the top half of the screen. On the bottom half of the screen are the clips that have been created in the last hour. 89 clips across those 7 channels were created in the last hour. So folks are pretty excited about what's going on here. Finally, I've got 2 word clouds in the bottom left side of the screen. The top word cloud are the words that are commonly being used in the titles of those channels. You can see there's a Showcase Silent Hill event based on the really large text that we see in that block. And in the bottom word cloud, those are the words that are commonly used in the titles of the clips. And nothing really sticks out. Mugs, shirts. I see HTTP in there. Maybe we should filter out HTTP. But something's going on there, and it's clear that things are happening in multiple languages there. I see Mundo, I see Tao, I see Essa, I see Uma, Besta. There's something international going on with Silent Hill, and without looking at Twitch, I can see what's going on and get a little bit of insight as to something trending on Twitch. That's pretty much the last feature that I've built at this point. There's a couple tweaks that I've put onto it to allow you to see other channels that you watch that are live. See that in a very similar view. But I'm running into a problem at this point. Revenue. I've been building this all off of that Progress sponsorship. We need to get this thing paying for itself. And the first way that folks say, oh, well, you got a website, just put advertising on it. Well, yeah, but if I'm putting advertising around other people's content that they created, there could be a request for revenue sharing. And How do we make sure that our advertisers match the content that we're presenting in those clips? Could be tricky. I already built that trending page, so maybe there's other unique Twitch viewing features that we can add that folks can access for a small subscription fee. What about adding market analysis reports? Using that viewership data, we've already shown we can pivot and show some interesting view capabilities and analysis of those clips, whether it's AI at the transcriptions, taking a look at the content that's in the titles and names of what's going on in the channels and the clips. There might be something interesting that we can get out of there and generate some monthly reports on the topics discussed, something that actually looks at the content that's going on Twitch, not just, well, how many views were there, how many folks were watching or participating or subscribing or cheering about these eh, these videos. Those are different ways that you can interact with them. Well, I don't want to show that. I want to show what were folks talking about. What's the interesting things that are happening out there. As a marketing department that works on a product, I want to know when people are talking about my product. What are they saying about it? How do they feel about it? What's the sentiment around my product? There's some interesting data we can collect there. And just this weekend, we ticked over 20 million clips, which leads to another technical showdown. It's a little bit more data than our database processor can handle. So I'm actually looking at the data right now and figuring out, can we scale this back? There's channels out there that have hundreds of thousands of clips that have only one view. Somebody created the clip and forgot all about it, didn't share it, didn't promote it. So it's only got one view. Well, do I really care about that on ClipTalk? So I'm going through and I'm cleaning up some of that data. If you go out to the website now and you click through to the system status page, it's under the About menu at the top. You'll see we've got about 14 million clips at this point. I'm slowly deleting. We're going to end up deleting about 11 million clips. It's going to save me about 60% of my database space and make it easier, faster for me to interact with and query and process that data because I'm not looking through all that cruft. That's okay. That's data that I can reload from Twitch again if I need it. But for right now, when I'm trying to get revenue moving and have an active and running website, I don't want to pay more for database. So I'm going to cut back on that database so that I can extend my runway. That cost value analysis. I need to extend my runway so I can build some revenue and then we can load more data later. So I've got to make that choice and move forward with it. At this point, the project's pretty complex. I've got 15 projects in my Visual Studio solution. This is all built with .NET, C#, .NET, Blazor, Azure Functions. I've got an API project that contains my HTTP APIs that gets delivered as an Azure Functions project next to my Azure Static website. Cool. That makes sense. My back office project you see there, that's all the sync and aggregation work that runs off cycle. You don't interact with that directly, but that's an Azure Functions app that runs on App Service and synchronizes all that data. The services and services Raven DB projects, those have my interfaces from my repository and do my data access. I have a Twitch project here that has all the tools and data models for interacting with the Twitch API. A view models project that has here's the shape of the objects that I send down to Blazor and inside the Blazor application so that it can present that. I can share those same classes back and forth between my Azure Functions and your browser where it's being rendered. Very, very cool. I have an administrative website that I've been slowly building so that tools like that dead letter queue reprocessing, I can put it out there and I can browse somewhere and just run that tool from my phone, from anywhere in the world. I don't have to be back at my workstation here to tune and work on the website. Of course, I've got my web app. I've got a components project out there that has some of the project's components that I'm going to reuse, whether it's between my Blazor website or my static web website that has that SEO optimized ASP.NET Core project. And you'll also see highlighted in bold there, new project that I started adding, Chatbot. So I've got another way to analyze data that's happening live in public on Twitch. I've got the transcription console project you see at the bottom there. That's my one-off console tool, so I can run commands locally here and debug and test things. And I've got a unit test project at the bottom called Test Blazor Client that runs a couple tests to make sure things are running properly. It's been a long time. Almost 2 years I've been running this website, and I've learned a couple things. Building a website business is hard. Everybody wants something for free. Deciding how and where to monetize, you're going to have folks complaining, jealous, upset. They want as many things for free as they can. And I appreciate that. I understand that. They also don't want advertising. But at some point, somebody's got to pay for this thing. So I got to figure out where to draw that line. Building a website like this that runs 24/7 requires a lot of time and dedication. I've spent a lot of time, nights and weekends, tuning, tweaking, making sure that this website runs. My marketing, I initially assumed would be organic. Folks from my channel, from other streamers' channels would tell folks about it, and it would just kind of grow, and people would check it out and tell their friends, tell their families, and people would visit. It doesn't work that way. You need to work on this. You need to groom it. And the paid placements to get other folks talking about it, to put advertisements in other places, they're worth it. Paid advertising is worth it. Your favorite technology might not be the right choice for your project. MySQL was my favorite relational database that I could use for this, and it didn't work. I had to pivot. I had to learn RavenDB, learned a brand new database language and tools and features, and rolled that out. And it took me time. But it was a learning experience. I grew as a developer. I grew as a technologist, teaching and learning about that live on Twitch in front of an audience. It's one thing to give a speech in front of a bunch of folks like this and talk about, here's what I learned, here's what's going on. But to be vulnerable like that, reading, learning, making mistakes in the public eye, on the open internet. My mom told me that my mom was a school teacher for 30, 40 years. My mother told me that took guts. You would never find her reading and learning about something in front of the students. But to do that and to show that I have flaws and that it takes me time to learn, and here's how I go through that, that took a lot. That impressed her as a teacher. And I feel good about that. But it would have been great if the technology I had chosen worked right the first time. So we've grown, we've learned, we've got some next steps ahead of us. And I continue to develop and build Clip Talk live in front of an audience. And I'm still modifying, tuning, and tweaking it to this day. And I'm going to continue doing it. I've got a 2-year anniversary coming up here in November. I'm probably going to run a really long live stream and teach people and talk about it, build new features. It's going to grow, and I'm going to be happy about it. It's a good thing. And I feel positive about where this is going. It's not making me money yet, but it's going in the right direction. And I feel positive about that. Thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate you taking some time, spending the hour with me, learning a little bit about Clip Talk, learning about my journey, discovering, building with Azure, Blazor, with .NET. Do me a favor, check out the website, kliptok.com. I've got a blog out there for Clip Talk that talks about some of the features that I've built. It's got some code snippets on it, screenshots of some of the features that I've talked about, kliptok.com/blog. And that feedback website, feedback.cliptalk.com. You can find me on YouTube, Twitch, GitHub, and Twitter at C#Fritz. Once again, thank you so much. If you have any questions, I'll hang out for a bit and we can chat.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. Really, really appreciate it. I'm actually going to go ahead and stop the recording.